Hello. I wanted to put this video out there because one day I woke up to a cold house where my heater was blowing, but it was blowing cold air. Going down to my Nest thermostat, I saw that it was giving me an E74 code, which is no power to the RH wire detected. And so I decided to look online to see if I can get some information to find out what the actual problem might be, the cause of this E74 error code, and was actually unable to find any information that diagnosed my particular problem. So I thought I'd put this out there for you do-it-yourselfers and try to help you narrow it down. So I believe my Nest thermostat is a generation 2 or maybe generation 3 Nest, but I believe the error code will look just the same no matter what generation Nest you have. So let's take a look. And if you can see that E74 error code. And so basically what it's saying is there's no power to the being supplied to the actual thermostat. So naturally you might think, okay, well maybe the power wire that runs from the furnace itself up to the thermostat has lost connection somehow, or it's bad wiring, and you might need to run a new wire. It's possible, but that's be very rare for a situation like that probably to occur. That was not the issue with my system, but in essence what it's saying is that it does not have power being supplied from the heater unit to the thermostat, so there's a breakage somewhere in the wiring. So I'll take you down to the heater and show you some diagnostic tools that I used to narrow down what the problem actually was. Alrighty, so we're down here at the unit, and as you can see I have a pretty common heater system here. It's a Carrier. I believe this one was manufactured back in 1995, so it's a little bit older, but it's actually a pretty common one that's in most houses. And even if it's newer, the design is roughly the same. The components and working mechanisms are virtually the same. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find the switch, the power switch to it, and it usually looks just like a light switch. And just make sure you flip that off. Actually, you probably can hear that my heater's running right now, but it's just the blower. It's actually blowing cold air out. And so I'll show you the fix for that. Again, look for the switch. It should be nearby the heater, and go ahead and make sure that is turned off, and that will make sure that the power itself is shut off to the actual unit. So go ahead and start by taking off the cover, and you just basically pull up and then take off the covers. And mine has a secondary bottom panel as well. Go ahead and same thing, just pull that straight up and pull it off. Believe me, these things are a little bit of a pain sometimes to get off. They're definitely more of a pain to get back on. But you'll notice basically a hot mess of wiring down here and into the control panel. Don't be intimidated by that. We're not going to be getting into all that today, but basically what you want to do is we're going to be following the wiring that's coming out of the control panel and going up to the actual different components throughout the system here to try to find out where the breakage is at. You do have a couple different sensors and a couple different pieces here. Like for instance, down here on my unit, I don't know if you can really see it there. It might be better to see it up there. Is the actual igniter, and that glows orange. It glows up pretty hot to ignite the gases whenever there's gases coming out. And then to detect that there's actual flame sensor up here that goes into the flutes, and that detects that there's actual ignition, actual flame. If any of them are not functioning properly, your system will not run. And there's different diagnostics for those types of things. We won't get into that today. But basically what we're doing again is we're trying to follow the wiring throughout the system and to the different sensors. And then there's a method of bypassing the sensors to one by one to try to narrow down exactly where the breakage is at. Okay, so you have a couple different sensors going throughout the appliance here, and one of them is a flame rollout sensor, and basically it detects flame that's rolling out from the flutes and basically just coiling back, and it's not able to go straight into the heat exchanger. And so the system will shut down in a case like that if there's the flame rollout sensor is bad, because it does not want the flame rolling back and frying any of the actual inner components of the heater. The flame should be going straight in through the holes that you can see that actually go into the heat exchanger. There's also other sensors and things around the unit, and those have connections as well. You see a few of those. A common issue that causes this problem where it blows cold air is a high limit switch, which actually was the problem with my particular unit. And what that was is a switch that basically tells the heater if it's overheating past the acceptable limit, and will shut the system down so that the components are not damaged. So here is the method for bypassing the different sensors. And remember, you want to do this one by one so you can try to narrow down exactly which exactly where that breakage is at in the wiring system. So we will basically start with there's a couple different sensors. We're going to go ahead and start with this one up here, and it's the same method. But what you want to do is basically just take out these two different connectors right there, and we're going to splice them together. We're going to just basically take the sensor out of the equation and just make sure that the wiring is able to complete a complete loop with itself without any breakage, and see if that narrows it down. Okay, so remember those wires that were the two orange wires in the system. Basically what I did is I took those two wires off that were connected to the sensor right there, and I actually put a piece of wire connecting the two of them together. And then what you would do is put the covers back on, because there's if you can see it right here, there's a switch that will cut power off to the unit if that is not depressed. So you want to put your bottom cover back on to make sure that's depressed, and flip your switch back on again, and then go ahead and turn your heater on to a higher degree than what your house is currently set at right now. So that way it'll tell the heater basically it needs to kick on, and then you will see if things function properly from there. In my case, this was not the particular problem, but it's the same method. Basically, you would use this exact method for every sensor that you have on there until you narrow it down. This one was not the actual issue, so shut your system back down, make sure you flip your switches again, and go ahead and take this wire out and put the connections back in place on the sensor. Okay, so on to the next sensor, because that one did not narrow down the problem. So again, we shut our system back down and make sure we shut the power off, and we're going to check the next one where we see two wires going into, and you see it right back in here, and this is actually the high limit switch right here, and there's two connectors on it. So I'm going to use the same method. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect these two wires, and then I'm going to go ahead and splice these two wires together with the little piece of wire that I showed you earlier. Okay, so I took those wires off of the sensor and again spliced them together with another piece of wire. If you can see that, here, make sure those connections are together. Go ahead and put your bottom piece back on, or wherever that power switch is at. Make sure that that's depressed in there somehow. Also, being that you're turning the electricity back onto the unit, make sure that nobody is touching anything. Make sure that the exposed wires that you're connecting here are not going to be touching any other piece of metal when you turn this on, or that could be bad. And then again, find your switch, turn it back on. Make sure that your thermostat is cranked up to a temperature that you know it'll tell the system to turn on, and we will see if we have any function at that time. As you can see, it's turned the unit on, and you heard a click, which is the gas valve opening, and we will see if we have flame at this point. Should take just a moment. You'll see the igniter start to glow, and at that point, you'll have ignition as well. Let's see if we can actually get this in video. You'll see the igniter down there starting to glow. If you don't see that glow, that is a problem. Obviously, the system is not moving past this point. But since we have glow, now we have another click where the gas is opening up, the gas valve, and now we have flame. So we know that the igniter is good, we know that the flame sensor is good, but it's hard to know if those are good before you get to this point if you don't actually have those pieces working. So now we see that splicing these things together and bypassing that sensor actually was the fix to it. There's basically a breakage in that sensor, the high limit, that was not allowing power to continue to flow continuously through the system and supplying power to the actual thermostat. Therefore, it was not able to turn the system on. So in a case like this, it's a pretty simple fix. You just, there should be one or two bolts or screws that actually hold that thermostat or that switch into place. Make sure your system again is turned off so you're not touching any wiring in there, and go ahead and just undo those screws, pull the switch out, and go ahead and replace it. In this case, it cost me $6 to have heat Again, in my house, of course, the heater failed. The switch failed on the coldest day of the entire year here in Colorado. That's just the way things go, apparently, but nobody wants to wake up to that. So I hope this video helps somebody out there to narrow down your particular issue, even if it's not the high limit. I showed you a method that you can use to bypass the other sensors. And again, remember, you have to do that one by one and turn the system, cycle the entire system back on after each time that you make a new connection with the different sensors, or bypassing the different sensors. And if the system works good after that, then you found what your problem is. It's that particular sensor. Just replace it, make sure you get the right one, and everything will be good for you.